Hello, fantasy managers, and welcome to another podcast live from Fantasy Football Hub. As you might be able to tell, I am not Andrew Ferguson, as he's been yellow flagged on a night out, but I am joined by regular podcaster Andy Green. Hello, Andy. How you doing? Good. Thank you very much. Good to be back. And of course, Adam Hotcroft. How you doing, Adam? Have you recovered from last night? Good. I should also say a shout out to those watching live. We're going to be answering some of your questions, hopefully during the podcast and also at the end. So yeah, if you got any questions about this game week that you want any of us to answer, then please feel free to jump in with some questions. We are going to be going over 3 hot topics, and before going on to our own transfers and captaincy plan. But the first hot topic we're going to go over is from Fantasy Football Hub contributor Richard Clark. When does player form, e.g. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Fernandes, etc., take priority over the blank and double game week transfer strategies? Is it better to play the week in front of you than try to stockpile small advantages later on? So really good question there from Rich, and one that I'm intrigued to hear your guys' thoughts on. So Andy, what are your thoughts on Richard's question there?
You can answer yourself.
A few weeks off, and I've gone rusty and forgotten all the audio etiquette already.
Right, so let's. Yeah, well, I think you're unmuted now.
There we go. Everyone can hear us.
We're all good to go. This is what happens when Andrew decides to go on a night out, and I'm left to organize. Okay, so Adam, what are your thoughts on Richard's question there?
About which.
Sorry, Andy, I asked you first. Let's go with you.
Yeah, it's certainly one that I've been a bit frustrated with myself, and I'm sure a lot of other fantasy managers have as well, where you're kind of maybe aiming towards that week 31, or you're looking. I mean, one of the things I sent out a tweet earlier today talking about, looking at players like Calvert-Lewin, and I took him out on the basis of his fixture turn. And of course, since then, he's just continued on his form. And so for me, it's not just a question of just aiming for double game weeks or strategizing towards a kind of blank game week 31, but it's also a case of, do we start, particularly this season, do we start to almost ignore fixture turns and focus on form? I mean, Calvert-Lewin had Arsenal, Man United, of which he scored 2 and 2, and probably should have had 4 and 2. And then he's got Chelsea and Liverpool up next. Now, Chelsea, we know, on the fixture difficulty rating on Fantasy Premier League, it's rated 4. Bright red, as if to say it's a difficult fixture, but I certainly wouldn't say that's difficult. And Liverpool at home, I mean, of course, we saw what Watford did to them, so perhaps that's not even a 4 on the fixture difficulty rating either. So for me, Rich's question is very timely, and certainly I think a lot of players have been avoiding the likes of Calvert-Lewin for fixture turns, and also avoiding the likes of Bruno Fernandes because of the small chance that, or rather the large chance that he will have a blank in 31. And I think it's been very costly for them, and I think if many players, including myself, had stayed with the form players or picked up the form players like Bruno Fernandes after the 0-0 draw that they had against Wolves, he started to perform, and we'd have certainly taken a nice rank jump on the back of bringing in those form players. So yes, I would agree that there's a danger in focusing on fixtures and focusing on a kind of blank 5 game weeks down the line.
Yeah, no, I think there's some very much words of wisdom in there. What are your thoughts on Richard's question, Adam?
I think it's how we perceive the fixture ticker.
Yeah.
So I think we said it a couple of weeks back. You looked at, I mean, for me, Everton, I would say, are a team that are really gunning for top 4, whereas Spurs at the moment are some way off. So I think actually, when we're looking at the fixture ticker, other than possibly Man City and Liverpool, and even we said Liverpool slip up the weekend, I think we need to go with what teams have got to play for plus the form of the fantasy assets. So I'm pretty much going to ignore fixtures going forward. So I just don't. I think when I was looking at Everton's a few weeks back, I feel watching Everton, they can score in any game, and I think the way Richarlison is playing with Calvert-Lewin, they're a threat. I think looking at Wolves, I fancied them to score multiple times at Spurs yesterday. I wasn't surprised with the result at all. In fact, the only time I was surprised is when I looked at half time and Spurs were winning. So I don't know. I think we've just got to. I think Arsenal, Man United. I think United look better with Fernandes, but I think we're at the stage now where it isn't necessarily the big six anymore. I think it's probably the big two, and then the rest. And I think we saw Norwich's result against Leicester. The gap between these teams at the moment isn't huge. I think anybody can beat anybody on their day. So I think it's more looking at the player rather than the team at the moment. So I would say I think Fernandes could easily return against. Who's he got? He's got Spurs and Man City. I think he could return in both of those games. So I think he's a very good player to look at. I think you've got Calvert-Lewin. He's got Chelsea and Liverpool next. Liverpool's a derby, and I think Liverpool and Everton will be really motivated for that game, given what happened in the FA Cup. I think in particular, I think they felt that they'd let the fans down in that particular match. So I could really see Calvert-Lewin and the likes of Richarlison keeping it up. I think the Wolves guys, I think they look on fire at the moment. Doherty, Jota, and Jimenez. So I think I would look at personally. I would look at the players in form, and not worry too much about the fixtures at this stage.
So if it looks like we're going to find out a lot more about the teams that are going to blank in game week 31, and it looks like we are going to have a lot of blanks. If you're sort of planning and you don't have a wild card, you don't have your free hit chip, would you sacrifice, potentially a player that does play in game week 31 that isn't in good form for perhaps the likes of Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Fernandes or somebody like that?
I think it depends on your strategy ultimately. I think at the moment there's a couple of really good players that are definitely playing in game week 31. I think Sarr looked electric the other day, absolutely, to the extent I'm considering swapping Harvey Barnes for him, depending obviously on the Leicester result. I thought he was it's probably as good an attacking performance as I've seen in a while, bearing in mind the opposition. I think him and Deeney absolutely caused Liverpool some problems. I think Jota is in, and Doherty are in incredible form at the moment, and I think they're examples who play in 31 and have and are in great form. I think Fernandes, it depends on your setup. I wouldn't discourage people from bringing him in. It just depends who you're getting rid of. In my case, it would have to be either Mane, Salah, or De Bruyne. So I just need to balance that up. So I think it's all very team specific.
There's one player actually I've been looking at on the opposite end of the form, which is Danny Ings. Now he's owned by over 33% of players. A lot of active players will have him in with this, again, looking at the fixture run. Personally, I think he's been a bit weak with Redmond being out injured. And I don't know what his issue was, that he only trained up until Friday. I think he only trained on Friday, and so therefore he wasn't risked for the weekend. But this is an example of a very tough form versus fixtures when you've got someone like Jota, who's top form, and you've got someone like Ings who potentially is out of form, let's say in the recent short term, but then he's got Newcastle at home and then Norwich away up next. Most likely will blank in 31, but that's the sort of player that I'm thinking, just this basis this discussion, should we be looking at taking Danny Ings out for a Calvert-Lewin or for a Jota?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've got Ings, I don't have Jota, I don't have Calvert-Lewin, and I think that if I was playing my wild card now, I probably wouldn't have Ings and I would have one of those two. But I've got other fires in my team to put out, and I don't think that it's an essential move to make. And I think far from it. I'm fairly happy giving Ings a couple of more run outs, and hoping that he can come back into form and Southampton can come back into form as well. Moving on then, we're going on to a question now from FPL Autopic. Is triple Wolves assets a good idea? If so, should we go double attack or double defence? And is Jimenez better than Jota if price isn't a consideration? So Wolves obviously have a really good run of fixtures. They're top of the hub fixture ticker up until game week 34. So they got good fixtures. They've got good form. They're also going to play in game week 31, which we know is going to be a blank game week. So they've got a lot going for them. I can't really see a reason not to triple up, to be honest. The question is, which three do you go for is, I think, is slightly more difficult. So, Adam, coming to you then, what if you were to wildcard now, what three Wolves players would you go for?
Oh, really easy. Doherty, Jimenez, Jota. No brainer for me. I think they've. I regretted not bringing in Doherty a couple of weeks back, and the only reason is because I wanted Ricardo Pereira, and I thought him and Bolly is a better combination than maybe Soyuncu and Doherty, and I got that wrong completely because Bolly's done nothing. He hasn't had a shot in 3 or 4 game weeks. I thought he'd be more dominant from set pieces. It hasn't worked out. Doherty at the moment, and I think with the Traore injuries makes him even better. He is on absolute fire, worth every penny of the 6 million. Wolves will keep clean sheets. I think in the next they'll keep clean sheets, but he just looks like scoring and setting up. He's setting up a lot of chances. So I'm trying to look for a way that I can bring him in, and the reason I'm looking at him as well is in a lot of my mini leagues, a lot of people have got Bolly. And I think he's probably back. I looked at it early. He's back 20% owned in a lot of my leagues, whereas Doherty, hardly anyone has him, and I can't see him slowing down. He's just as attacking. I mean, he's almost to the stage that he's getting not quite as many chances as the front two, but I think he's definitely worth having in. Jimenez is the steady one, and I think he'll continue to get points on penalties. He'll get the minutes. He's quite a safe pick. But he's consistently returns, and then you've got Jota's the explosive one, and I think again with Traore potentially being injured, I think he's likely to play. Might lose some minutes to Europa League. He's the one that gets dragged off at the 70 mark. So I think probably for me out of the three, I would say that Jimenez and Doherty are the absolute ones that I would go for, and I think Jota has got a little bit more competition with the likes of Troy Deeney, with the likes of we said Danny Ings, and I think there's other people that you can consider around that price point. But they're the three that I would go for without any hesitation.
What about yourself, Andy? If you had to choose Jota or Jimenez?
Well, I do have 3 Wolves, and certainly it was. At the time when I brought in Bolly, it was a price issue because, I mean, Doherty hadn't really returned since game week 19. And at that point, he was 6.1 mil. Now, though, I mean, talk about form. I mean, he is, again, I talked about Trent like this. I would say that when you have a player like Doherty, you've almost got another midfielder there with the added bonus of clean sheets. It's interesting. He was interviewed saying, what impact does Traore have on your game? And think, with the intention that people would think that he's less attacking, but actually he said that Traore becomes the winger and he becomes the centre forward. And we saw that yesterday where, he scored from a centre forward position basically. So whether you're wildcarding or not, should be the kind of first Wolves name on the team sheet at the moment. It's a tough one when you've already got 3 Wolves players to kind of rejig it to get him in, but there's always ways. And I think Traore now, with that recurrence of the injury, is just a bit too risky. He was having his minutes managed, and then he's come off in 73 with the recurrence of that shoulder injury. So yeah, I can't disagree with Adam. Doherty, Jota, and Jimenez are the 3 standout options. The one thing about Jota that slightly puts me off is we had this last season where he goes in these purple patches and then rapidly comes into them and rapidly fades out of them. So that's just one thing to watch out for. But again, fixture proof as well. You look at their fixtures; they're green all the way. Got Brighton, West Ham, Bournemouth, Villa. That is, and they play in 31. So for me, whether you're wildcarding or not, you should have 3 Wolves
Do
players.
you know what? It doesn't matter on Wolves who they play because, like you said the word fixture proof. Doherty scored against Man City. Jimenez and returned against Liverpool. I think they're the sort of team that will score against anybody. So because I think the counter-attacking style really, really suits them. So I actually would agree they're completely fixture proof, and I think most people will go for 3. I'm considering trying to rejig it and even correcting my mistake of bringing Bowley in and trying to get the 3 that I've just mentioned, but it just might take me a few hits. But I think it could be worth it.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm in a very similar position to you. I've got Bolly and I've got Traore, and I do kind of want to switch them out for Jota and for Doherty. I think all 3 of us actually sort of mentioned Doherty over the last few weeks, saying that he's going to be a good pick, and unfortunately we haven't gone for him, but probably the way the season's going at the moment. But
the standout stat for me on Doherty, and I posted this, but I still didn't pick him. I think maybe it was the rotation thing with the Europa League that I was thinking with him and Traore, but was the number of big chances he's got. 2 weeks ago, he'd had 11 big chances. Factor in whatever he's got in the last couple of weeks, but I think he's got more big chances than the likes of Martial, Harry Kane. So there's a lot of really attacking players that he's had more big chances than, and obviously, and up until recently, he hadn't scored them. But the fact he's consistently getting them is so encouraging. That I think we're all right to be considering him.
Yeah, no, I've been really impressed with Doherty and his stats, and I'm just so gutted that I haven't managed to bring him in, because he's usually the player that I sort of jump on if he does come into this type of form, and it does seem to be making a difference. He does seem to be playing a bit further forward at the moment, and attacking like he was last season, really, which is all good signs. Okay, moving on then. We've got a question here from Karan, which players are worth having or worth using a transfer/hit on if City and Arsenal get a double game week in game week 29? So we're currently recording this on the Monday, and I guess it's one of those questions where it's kind of difficult to answer without knowing for sure, and I should say that throughout this week we're going to find out so much more information in terms of the FA Cup results and what that means for blank game week 31 and the teams that are missing out on that, and we'll really be able to sort of formulate a chip strategy around that. And also, hopefully, we're going to find out whether there will be this potential double game week, which will be next game week in game week 29 between City and Arsenal. So, I think that there's a lot going on here, but what are your thoughts on it all, Adam? Just around the double game week 29 potentially. Is it worth?
I'm not interested in it in the slightest.
No.
I think City will rotate, and I wasn't surprised to see Foden starting yesterday. Trying to predict who will be in the team is hard enough. I think at best you're going to get just over maybe a game and a quarter per player, but you're guessing, and we've all tried guessing Pep before, and a lot of the time, even Jamie Jackson, and a lot of the time we haven't succeeded, have we? So I don't know if I want to put myself through that. Arsenal, there's only really one option, and that's Aubameyang, and I see the appeal there. But if he doesn't play in game week 31, I think that would, for me, it would be a hit to bring him in, possibly a hit to take him out. It's probably not worth it. And actually, I think in 29, loads of other teams have great fixtures. Liverpool have got Bournemouth at home. And I know there's a bit of talk about rotation, but I don't know if there will be. I think Klopp will want them firing on all cylinders for that match. It's more important, I think, to get a bit of momentum than to rest players, because they've just had that winter break. You'll rest them in the week. So I don't know. I think looking at the fixtures for 29, there's a lot talking about bench boosting. I think we're better off just sticking with the teams that have got good fixtures rather than trying to get a game and a half out of some City players that will probably end up taking out the week after. And I think in terms of Arsenal, one of the games is City. I don't know. I don't see Arsenal scoring loads and loads of goals.
Have you, just out of interest, have you formulated a sort of a chip strategy, or are you waiting until we, find out all?
Yeah, I have got one, but it is a bit dependent on what happens this week. My plan is to bring in players that play in 31 and not use a free hit, because I actually like a lot of the players, and obviously the ones there. We've talked about 3 Wolves. We've talked about, I think Watford have got some good options in Deeney and Sarr, and potentially defensively, and I think they've looked good. I think Sarr is so important for that, how they want to play, because without him they look a different team, but he gives them that pace on the break. And I think if Everton play, that will pretty much cement it. 'Cause I've got Calvert-Lewin, and I know, I think Andy Martin's just mentioned about Richarlison or Fernandes, but Richarlison looks brilliant at the moment. I think that partnership, he was unlucky yesterday not to get anything. He's I think he's a genuine option as well. So I just think that it's not going to be worth a free hit. No matter how many fixtures there are, I cannot see it being worth a free hit, because I know that the 4 or 5 players that I want, I can probably bring in anyway. And then if I'm clutching at straws, having to bring in a Newcastle defender, or dare I say it, someone from Villa, I don't think a free hit will compensate me. Whereas my plan is make 31, try and make it work somehow, and then I will either wild card 32 or 33, bench boost 34, and free hit 37. That's it at the moment, but it's subject to change. I could do it the other way round, possibly. But I don't really want to wild card too late in the season.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of going similar to the way you're thinking at the moment. It kind of a lot depends on the fixture, especially that Liverpool result against Chelsea. And if Liverpool win, then they blank in 31, and that, potentially that might force me to play a free hit then. What about you, Andy? Any thoughts on chip strategy, double game weeks?
Yeah, well, firstly, the double game week that may or may not be 29. I think obviously Aubameyang is the standout option from Arsenal. He is pretty clinical. It seems to be more clinical at the moment than he was last season. Last game, obviously 2 shots on target, 2 goals. Slight question mark over his positioning, but then Saka seems to be kind of holding that left wing on the attacking move, so he does drift in, obviously on penalties as well. Now it's West Ham and City potentially. City obviously have Laporte out now, so I actually be a bit more kind to, or a bit stronger towards Aubameyang, given that Laporte's out, because City have looked much poorer defensively without him this season. Although, of course, we just don't know what sort of formation they're going to play. With regards to City assets, I think I covered it last week in the podcast. Ederson's really the only standout one that is nailed on for both games. But again, the fixtures would be Man United and Arsenal. So again, you're not really anticipating much more than kind of appearance points there, maybe the odd save bonus, and potentially a slight chance for a clean sheet. So really, Ederson and Aubameyang. And then beyond that, you're looking at City attackers. Now, it's very much a boom-bust option there. Sterling's back, De Bruyne, obviously. A lot of people will have De Bruyne anyway. And Aguero obviously could, absolutely smash out of the park, or he could only play 60 minutes over 2 game weeks. So other than Aubameyang and Ederson, the other City assets to me seem to be kind of boom or bust. So that very much depends on your positioning and what you're looking to achieve. And, if you're looking for a flying jump up the ranks, a 300k rise, you might be looking at captaining Aguero over that double game week if it happens. So it's a boom bust strategy though. With regards to chips and blanks, I'm still aiming for managing 31 without the free hit. Although I actually think, I know I've been obviously monitoring Ben Crellin's kind of percentages, but there is a chance that Spurs West Ham goes ahead. I think if Spurs lose to Norwich, then Spurs West Ham will be a fixture in 31, which might be quite attractive for the free hit. So I'm not ruling it out yet. Obviously, if Liverpool have the game, my thinking is they're not going to play the kids, but they're going to play a kind of mishmash of first team and some young youth players. So I'm still hoping, obviously, Liverpool go out and then it's a much easier transition through 31, but we'll see. Still open on that one because I don't have the wild card, so I'm looking at using that free hit chip in 34 most likely.
Yeah, no, that all seems very sensible. We got one question we got a few questions actually, but one I want to touch on is if you had to choose a goalkeeper combination until the end of the season, what would you go for? And I think that's a good question actually, because you've really got to sort of, if you're wildcarding now, you really, if you want to make the most of the the upcoming doubles and blank game weeks, then I think choosing a good rotating goalkeeper that one that's likely to play in game week 31, but also have a couple of doubles and got good fixtures around that, then I think can be a really good advantage. I don't know if you got any thoughts on that, Adam.
If I was wildcarding now, I would probably, like you said, look to balance it of someone that plays and someone will get a double game week. So I think you could look at someone like Pope and Henderson. You could, if you don't want Pope, you could look at Foster and whether it's Henderson or someone else that's likely to get a double game week. I'd avoid McCarthy. I think McCarthy will be dropped this week.
Really?
Yeah, I think he's been at fault for a couple of goals. I think he was at fault for I know Ings let the ball go through, but I think he was at fault for that goal, the corner one against Burnley. He was at fault for the goal the weekend. They brought Gunn in long term to be the number one. I don't think McCarthy's ever had visions of him being the number one keeper there. So unfortunately, I'm left with that dilemma. I'll probably just risk it for the Newcastle. I'll tell you the other person I would look at, and this will probably not be a popular choice, but Tim Krul of Norwich. I thought they defended really well the other night against Leicester, and I think with Zimmerman coming back, they've actually been all right. And he's got a penalty save in him. That's what I quite like. And I think he's actually Norwich in the last 6. I think have kept 3 clean sheets, so they've looked all right recently. And I know Will's trying not to laugh there. He's trying to keep a straight face. But I don't know. I would. He's somebody I possibly would consider, and I would never have said that before.
I don't know. I think there are a lot of good goalkeepers out there at a similar price bracket. But if you're really desperate, then
I am desperate. I'm having a terrible season, so I might gamble on it. Go for Krul penalty saves.
Not as bad as mine. All right. Well, let's move on to having a look at our teams then, and starting off with you, Andy. For those that are listening to the podcast, maybe just have a quick chat through your team and then talk about the moves that you're thinking about. Obviously, it depends on the results later in this week. Probably, maybe it doesn't. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've got 2 transfers, so I'm holding on for some of these games this week. But I've got starting 11 would be Henderson in goal, Van Dijk, Alexander-Arnold, Bowley, Egan at the back, Salah, De Bruyne, Perez. It's an interesting transfer in last week. In midfield, Aubameyang, Ings, and Jimenez up top. And then my bench, well, it was looking quite strong a few weeks ago, and less so now. McCarthy, Stevens, Traore, and Duda for Norwich. So the obvious one for me that needs to be removed is Traore, as I mentioned. I think that recurring injury is just too much doubt going into these kind of fixtures when you need a playing 11 or maybe even a playing 15 if you're wildcarding, if you're bench boosting rather. So I'll be removing Traore, and then it's a case of where do I raise the funds. So as I mentioned, Ings is potentially on the chopping block for me. Perez as well, although again, the fixtures are tempting me in there. I thought actually he looked okay. Leicester as a whole don't look very good right now. And this is the thing, me personally, I've been sucked into some of these fixtures. Vardy being fit, I'd have brought him in as well. They've got some great fixtures coming up. Well, certainly Villa, Watford are potentially not even great fixtures anymore. But after that, they've got Brighton and then Palace in 33. So, he's just a short-term player for me. So my transfers I've got in my mind at the moment would be Ings to Jota and Traore to Sarr. I don't really want to talk about Sarr very much because I talked about him so many times over the last few weeks, and the Liverpool fixture put me off. So he'll definitely be coming into my team this week, most likely. And going forward, I think I'm still looking at bench boosting in 29. Once I make those 2 transfers, my team looks pretty strong. McCarthy is the one issue there. But I think other than that, I think the team looks pretty strong for a bench boost. And that's that. Yeah, I mean, it's a fairly simple transition as long as you don't have any more injuries over these coming games this week.
Yeah, no, it's looking good. All sounds pretty sensible to me. Adam, then moving on to your team. What are your thoughts for the upcoming game week?
Okay, so I'm going to be waiting until Thursday because that is going to have a huge impact on what I do.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if Leicester went out to Birmingham City, which I've got mixed feelings on for obvious reasons, but I don't really want Birmingham City winning. But if they go out, then maybe keeping hold of Pereira and Barnes, I'd be more likely to. I think I got seduced into getting Pereira and Barnes based on the fixtures. And Pereira's done okay, but I was so disappointed with Leicester the other night. I think the thing I've thought with Harvey Barnes in particular is just, and I've always thought this, he's always lacked end product, and he created a few chances, but he never looked like scoring. And when you compare him to someone like Sarr, it just looks a different level. Every time I've watched him, he looks so dangerous, and it looks like something's going to happen. So my thoughts at the moment, I could do one of a few things. The players on the chopping block, I could get rid of Harvey Barnes after a week and bring in Sarr. It's quite possible that will happen because Watford have a game in 31. I think long term it's a good move and it worked. The alternatives I could do Pereira to Doherty. I think Villa will score. And I think Doherty's just looked on absolute fire. So I'm considering those moves, but it ultimately depends on what happens this week. I will look to bring in players that play in 31 realistically. I think the one thing I would say about my current team, how it's set up, is because I have Salah and Mane, and I think it's a mistake having both of them. But at the same time, it could really, really pay off. I think it's one of them that I'm just reluctant to change because I think particularly against Bournemouth at home, one of them could haul. I have no idea which one. So I don't think I'll change that this week. I think if Liverpool don't end up playing in 31, I'll be very likely to take out either Salah or Mane and bring in Richarlison, assuming he plays. So, and I think because Liverpool play 32, they play Man City, don't they? So I wouldn't be as bothered about going down to 2 Liverpool players for that fixture.
Yeah, that makes sense. Got quite a few things going on. This time of season does get sort of very complicated with the potential blanks and double game weeks. I would stress that we do have other game weeks to play, and it's not all about focusing on the blank game week 31 and everything. But having said that, Wolves and Watford players look like good picks anyway, so I think that's where we should be focusing. And it looks like that's sort of where you're heading as well. Moving briefly onto my team, I do have a YouTube video which I go over my team in detail, so I'm not going to spend too long on it. But I've got Henderson in goal with Pope on the bench, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, Chilwell, Stevens and Bolly and at the back, and in the centre of the park I've got Traore, Salah, De Bruyne, Cantwell and Douglas Luiz, and up front I got Ings, Jimenez and Vardy. So the big one there for me is to try and get rid of Traore somehow, and I think as we mentioned earlier in the podcast, I'm looking at Doherty as a replacement, and for potentially try and get Traore and Bolly out for Doherty and maybe Sarr, and maybe have a sort of rejig around those players. Maybe also look to get rid of Chilwell as well. So a few different things that I'm contemplating. It also depends on the Vardy news. I think that he is likely to play next game. You can obviously Villa at home's a decent fixture. Sorry, Adam, but yeah, that's kind of the route that I'm heading down at the moment. But as I said, it all depends on the upcoming fixtures on the upcoming results of the FA Cup, I should say. So yeah, lots to ponder and lots to think over, and I'm certainly not going to be making any transfers until Thursday at the earliest. But should we move on then to some community questions? And I don't know if you guys seen any good community questions that we can jump onto.
Well, we've been kind of answering them as we go on. One of them was, what about Saka for Arsenal?
Yeah, that's I don't know. I'm still yet to be convinced by Arsenal. What about you?
Yeah, I'm the same. I think I'd only go with the Aubameyang from Arsenal if I was looking.
And one from Harshal is jumping on Ismaila Sarr, a knee jerk or a goodbye?
Oh, 100% a goodbye. I think for assets, definitely midfielders and attackers in that region, I think there are a few better for that price. Definitely on the midfielder side. When you compare him to the likes of Mounts, who else would be Harvey Barnes? I think even Grealish. I think it's just because he just gets so many big chances, creates so many big chances, gets into great positions. I think if he's fit, he's the best option in that bracket. And I don't think there's anybody that really compares to him. That's my opinion anyway.
And one player that hasn't really been discussed yet across Twitter, I think Adam briefly mentioned him, is Troy Deeney under this kind of Watford resurgence, although it's only one game strong so far. They looked absolutely incredible against Liverpool. I mean, I don't think, it was a shock result, but they've actually played with Sarr in that team. It's kind of like Sarr is like the Mane of that team, where when he's in the team, he just makes the whole thing tick up front. So much faster breaking, so much faster going forward. And, Deeney nailed on pens, 11 points last game. He's got some decent-ish fixtures, although we just said we're almost going to discount the fixtures, but he's got Palace, Burnley and Southampton, and he does have a fixture in 31. Is anyone looking at Troy Deeney maybe as a differential for Calvert-Lewin or Ings?
I quite like Deeney. I think that the difficulty is that, Sarr is probably a little bit of a better pick, and he does play in midfield, and obviously that means he gets more points for clean sheets and goals and stuff. And also, I feel like that there are better forward options around that sort of price bracket. I think that there aren't actually that many good midfielders around that price bracket, so Sarr kind of makes a lot of sense. You could potentially look at the double up, though. I think that they've obviously got pretty decent fixtures, and of course they play in 31. So yeah, I don't think that double up is a terrible idea. I probably won't be doing it myself, but what do you think, Adam?
I like the double up, and I'll definitely. I mean, I think you got it spot on when what you said, Andy. That I think Sarr has such a positive effect on Deeney and Watford in general. And it's of course it was a Liverpool game, but if you look back at the matches before that, both Deeney and Sarr, the stats were incredible, and I was so relieved when Sarr was injured because it was just before the Villa game, and we wouldn't have beaten them if Sarr was playing. He just adds a different dimension, and he gets close to Deeney as well. So Deeney will get a few assists for him, and vice versa. I think one option not mentioned is Decore. I think he's just the budget option if you can't afford Sarr. But I think he will get points as well. He'll trickle along with stuff. So
yeah, he's one of those players that never has great stats, but always seems to have a good shot on him and manages to score a few goals, doesn't he? So yeah.
Now that De La Fea's out, I mean, I don't know who's going to take his spot. Perhaps Pereira as well. Yeah, he could. He's only 5.6, and he had an absolute amazing season last season. This season, I think he's only got one return. Or no, he's scored 3 all season, so he might be another option.
Yeah, I just think you go Sarr over both of them, in my opinion. But I suppose if you're low on budget. Yeah, I'd probably still. How much is Decore? Is he upwards of 6 yet? Is he about 5?
No, he's still only 5.6 as well.
Yeah, so I'd go Decore over Pereira personally. I think he's a good shout because he played quite well when he come on, but I'd probably go Decore. But I definitely would go Sarr over both of them.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, and I completely agree. To be honest, another question there from Harshal: since Traore since Traore's start isn't guaranteed, what would be the ideal third Wolves asset if you have already got Jimenez and one of the defenders? I think we kind of touched on that one earlier. Probably go with Diego Jota there. I don't know if any of you guys disagree with that.
No, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
There's a question from Ian Parron here, which is actually topical for my team. How likely is the bench boost in 29 to outscore having 4 playing subs in either one of the double game weeks? The way I answer this is obviously, if you've still got your wild card, then you can position your team for either one of those double game weeks. However, you're unlikely to have such a set of sweet fixtures for those games. You've got the likes of Southampton have Newcastle, you've got Wolves have Brighton, Sheffield United have Norwich. So defensively, that bench boost in 29, if your team is set up for it, is quite attractive. The risk, obviously, is that if you're playing the bench boost after wildcarding in, say, 32 or 33, is that your team might be full of what I would call bench fodder, players that you've just got in there to facilitate other players. And also, you might have those bench players or even some of your starting 11 playing fixtures that just aren't that attractive. I haven't looked at the likely potentials, but I'm pretty sure that the fixture run won't be as sweet as it looks in 29. Don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, no, I think I'm still sort of very attracted to playing sort of the bench boost in one of the later game weeks, but I can sort of understand that logic. What about you, Adam?
I just think it depends on your plan. If you've wild carded and you plan to do this, I'm fine with it. I think it was something I was considering. Probability wise, I think it's slightly better in a double, but I think the points that you've made, Andy, are perfectly valid. And it just depends on how the fixtures fall, which we don't know yet. So it's very difficult to answer. It could, if I could foresee what the fixtures and double game weeks would look like now, I could say whether I think there is a better opportunity than 29. But I think how you've played it, Andy, makes sense. I think a few others are doing that. I think we've seen some mixed success of people playing it in a single game week. I think anyone that had double or triple Burnley the other week in that fluky win against Bournemouth, where VAR seemed to go their way, they'd have done quite well. The likes of McNeil, Charlie Taylor, Pope, etc. But then equally, people could have had it in that Sheffield United game where against Brighton, where they conceded, and then they've got 1 or 2 points. So it is a little bit of luck focused, but I think you're playing the odds, aren't you? I think fixture wise, there's some good, like we said earlier, there's some very good fixtures in game week 29 for a lot of teams, some very good home fixtures. So I get the appeal of playing it in that game week.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm really excited about the end of the season. I think there's so many different ways that you can play it, and there's so many different strategies, and whether you've got all your chips or you haven't got all your chips. Hopefully, if you're engaged in fantasy football, I'm sure those people that are watching and listening to this podcast are engaged, and it is a real opportunity to get a big jump on those mini league rivals towards the end of the season. So I'm kind of really looking forward to it, and hopefully we all three of us can finish strongly after a little bit of a testing season. But
a little bit.
Yeah, the understatement. But I think that's probably going to be a wrap for this podcast. Really enjoyed it with you guys, and thank you everyone for contributing in the chat as well. Andy, where can the viewers and listeners find you?
On Twitter at FPL Fantasy Guide.
And Adam?
On Twitter at ahopcroft13.
And I'm at FFH_Will. And as always, if you did enjoy this podcast, please hit the like button on YouTube if you're watching it, or rate on your favorite podcast provider. Our hub Twitter handle is FFH_HQ, the same with Instagram. And if you'd like to try out our membership for free, so you can use all of the tools that we demonstrated in this video completely free, just go to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk/free trial, where you can trial out all the membership for 7 days. But otherwise, it's a goodbye from me, and I'll see you later in the week where I'll be doing more videos. Bye for now.
Bye.